When we record the session becomes the recorded session is going to become available about 10 minutes after we stop we finish the meeting. And if I place that in the in that link for the the recording, it must say, the title must say recording of the meeting. If it doesn't say recording, you click on it and it says the session is expired or is not available, then it's a question for you, well, where would I find the recording? So there are two ways to find the recording. If I put an announcement that it says recording, it should say on the title, this is the recording. Or you go to Blackboard Collaborate and click on the 3 lines, and one of them, it says access to recording. Not sure if you get, it should say it should give you the option of the recording. And that way, if you go to Blackboard Collaborate, can you see the Blackboard Collaborate screen on your computer now? Where you have the Blackboard Collaborate and it says sessions and it says recordings. You click on the recording, it will give you the list of all the recordings. So that's just one way, since I remember now students had trouble finding where the recordings are. I wanted to make sure that you know how to find them. Okay, on the right side, you have the folders that includes the with the title. Like you have the honor lock, that's for instructor only, you won't have access to it. You have the syllabus. So in that folder, you have the welcome page, you have the syllabus, and you have the syllabus quiz. If you go up a folder, and you have your experiments. For each experiment, the way it's organized. So for like today, we have the introduction safety quiz would be there. I'm going to go to experiment 1. For experiment 1, you have the lab notebook. When we cover the syllabus, because that's what we are doing today for the meeting, class meeting, safety, and introduction, then you will see that you do have an assignment called lab notebook. The symbol for assignment, this might be very elementary, but sometimes it's helpful to pay attention to the symbols. So if you have like a document with the tray underneath, this is symbol or icon is for assignment. A question mark, that's for quizzes. So if you look at this, you have 2 assignments for the first experiment. Before next week or before next Thursday, you should do these 2 assignments and this 1 quiz. And then when you have that link, that is showing just a link to either external tool or is the title. It should say this is the experiment 1 recording, and the title for the experiment is the physical property, and then you have your video. Background theory, that's just the background theory. It's not part of the experiment. And then another assignment, upload lab report for physical properties. So everything is organized in one folder for you, so you don't have to go through all these different tabs. Try to locate this. If you go to content, then you get the table of content. It's not very organized. You can find it. There are different ways to find it, but it's not very organized. The way I have it organized all in one place for you. So what we are going to do today is go over the syllabus first. If you have questions, please type it in the chat box. We'll go back to the, oh, you didn't see that part. Okay. I may have to share that again for you to see the Blackboard Collaborate, have to find it. Or I would ask a student to share the screen so you could see the student's view. But there are like these 3 lines that you see here. Do you see the camera with the 3 line? The 3 line usually shows the menu bar. So when you open the communication, when you go down the communication toolbar, then you click on the Blackboard Collaborate like you did today in order to join the class. Then click on that 3 line that you have on the top left corner. It would give you option for sessions or for the recording. Then you click on recording. That was one concern that we had on the chat. If you have any questions, you just type it in the chat box, and I will come and answer your questions. Or you can use your mic. It's okay to use it. Just know that the session is being recorded. Okay, the syllabus. Your class time, it's 12:30 to 3:20. We're not going to be online for the 3 hours. It's kind of divided to pre-lab discussions, which we have live sessions to answer your questions, to talk about the experiment, the purpose why we are doing the experiment. I ask questions and I answer your questions during this pre-lab discussions. Co-requisite and prerequisite for the course. Co-requisite is a lecture, 2210 lecture, and prerequisites are 1045, 1046 and 1046 labs. For the co-requisite, if you want to transfer the course, you should transfer with the co-requisite. This is required. And then also, if you withdraw from a course, the co-requisite will be withdrawn automatically, or you have to withdraw from both classes. The solution to that, if you don't want to withdraw from both, you have to make sure that you get permission from your professor and get audit for the class that you're not happy with your performance, and stay with the class. That if you get audit for one of the co-requisites, you could stay with the other class. And my name is Dr. Banush Memori, and I will be your professor. I will help you during the semester. It doesn't have to be everything in order, right? So I can introduce me now at this point. I'll give my name. My email address. I prefer D2L course email because I teach more than one 102210 lab. Even if you tell me that you're taking 1022, 102210 lab, I'm teaching more than one. But when you send me email via the D2L, it's clear and I know exactly what you're talking about. So I prefer that. And I get a lot of email in my broward.edu, and I don't want to miss your email. The phone number is for department, that's my office, and then the fax number is for the department. My office hour, the office hour that I will conduct like a live session is going to be on Friday. You do have other options of making appointment or getting, sending me email. I prefer you attend the Friday morning office hours when you have questions over the emails, because we can share screen, we can talk, we can make sure that I can make sure that your question is answered. Even I have the option of bringing a whiteboard and drawing or writing and answering your questions. It's not, these are not possible via email. With the email is going to take like back and forth 5-6 emails in order to answer like simple questions that you could get over with like in 2 minutes using live sessions. During the class time, which is Thursday at between 12:30 and 3, hopefully you ask most of your questions then. Office hour Friday is the second best option, and the last option would be using asking your questions via email. I try to answer them, but it's not as easy as if it's the live sessions. Textbooks that you need for this class is going to be ebook. The ebook has many benefits, and I made sure that the ebook was available as soon as the pandemic started. It saves a lot of money. The students used to pay $140 last year for the same manual that you're getting it much better price now. So I negotiated. I was able to get it to the way that it's now offered, and I'm happy about that. I want you to purchase the lab manual, the ebook, and submit the confirmation number as an assignment to one of the folders. The material that is presented during the live sessions is not going to be enough for you to be able to succeed in the course. And the exam questions, the pre-lab questions, everything, and the introduction, it's not. So the ebook is required, one of the requirements for this course. Beside the ebook, other supplemental, the instructions how to get the confirmation number to submit it is given in the syllabus. Please follow that. Beside that, you need a lab notebook, and your lab notebook, I promised my 8 o'clock class that I would go get the lab notebook to show them how it looks like, and I forgot at the end. So hopefully I remember and you can remind me about the sample lab notebook. I don't have one of my own students, but I do have one that my son took class at different school, and that kind of makes my point that lab notebooks are kind of universal and everybody is using it. Yes, from bookstore, same thing. You can submit the receipt, a copy of the receipt, or the confirmation number. Either one. You could purchase it from bookstore, especially if you are using, if you are in College Academy, you are using scholarship or you're using financial aid. It's easier to purchase the ebook. Make sure it's the ebook, and you purchase the ebook from the bookstore and submit the confirmation. Yes, that was a question. Lab coats and the rubber gloves, all that, no need for this semester. The way that we are conducting, as I expressed in my welcome page or announcement, we will have Blackboard Collaborate meetings, live meetings during the beginning of your class. Then I will dismiss the class. Students at that point are going to watch the video. It's a recorded video. I performed experiments in the lab, and you will watch and you will see that, and made it collection of it, and now using it for during the pandemic. It was one of the best and the most affordable one for students, because when I looked for the kit for students to do some simple experiments at home, the kit was over $400 or $500 on top of what you are paying for the classes. That would have been. It's not just the cost. It's not possible for you to have everything that we have in the lab. So I tried my best when I was performing the experiments with the audience of my class, then to make it the most, as interactive as possible, and making, as close as possible if you were there and you were working with your lab partner, and your lab partner was doing part of the experiment. You were basically observing, but with in-depth explanation of the experiment. The other requirements is the reliable internet connection. Hopefully you have a good fast access. A laptop or desktop computer is also needed. You want to make sure you have a webcam or mic either in your computer or external. Those are the requirements. Now, do you have any questions for me? before we move on to the next part of the syllabus? Any questions? No questions? Okay. Okay. What do you expect to learn from organic chemistry lab? Because I'm teaching the lab for you. What do you expect? What did you think when you were registering for this class? What are you going to learn? You have some exposure to chemistry. You've taken 1045 and 1046, and this is organic. What did you expect? What do you think you are going to learn from organic chemistry lab? Any idea? Organic compounds and their properties. Very good. The shape of the molecules, as as clear as you can get them in inorganic chemistry, because in organic molecules they're kind of larger molecule. You don't get them to have them like a 3D clear 3D structure unless you're actually doing research. But yes, based on their physical properties, that's very good comments there. And I'm glad that I didn't get a comment that because it's a prerequisite for your major, and you had to take it, because that would be probably the least not least valuable, because it's requirement. I'm sure you wouldn't take it if it wasn't required for your course, but that should not be the only purpose and only thing that you are trying to achieve by taking the organic chemistry lab. So anyway, in organic chemistry, because you are a step up and more advanced chemistry students, we are getting closer to identifying structure of the molecular organic compounds or molecular compounds. Now, in order to determine a structure, you need to know the physical property and you need to know the chemical reactions of those compounds. Physical property, it's very helpful in identifying as long as your compound is pure. When a compound is synthesized, is discovered, someone comes up with a new compound. Any compound that is known so far has its own unique physical property, just like fingerprint to people. The compounds, they have their own physical property, and based on those physical property, you can actually identify your compounds. So when it comes to physical property, to depend on physical property, your compound must be clean and pure. If your compound is not pure, it's going to alter the physical property. And I give you like example, you cannot have, you cannot cover your hand with chalk, with something, glue or something, and then do fingerprint. Similar idea. There is a compound that we all know boils at 100 degrees Celsius, melts at 0 degrees Celsius, has a density of 1 gram per milliliter, has a refractive index of 0.6432, and that compound is water. Now, what happens if you add salt to water? What would be the new melting point? Still 0? Or it would be a different number if you add salt to water. It would be a different number because you learned about colligative properties, right? Colligative properties in 1046 and 1045, that it shows that if you add impurities, you make a solution out of the solvent, boiling point is going to change, melting point is going to change. So one way to find out if you identify your compound for solid compound is to determine melting point. In organic chemistry, you do a lot of melting or measuring melting point because you can depend on it if your sample is pure. And you could also say your sample is not pure. When you are measuring melting point in organic chemistry, you measure two numbers. You measure a temperature that first crystals starts melting. So when you see some of the sample starts melting, you record the number and you call that initial melting. Then you continue heating and then you measure the temperature that the entire sample is liquefying. And you call that final melting. So now, if your initial melting, let's say, is 120, and the final melting is 122, your sample is pure. How do we know sample is pure? Because the range of melting was very sharp. You had a narrow range of melting. You have, it's called sharp melting. Now, if your sample starts melting at 100 degrees Celsius, you have few crystals melting, liquefied at 100 degrees Celsius, and then by the time the entire sample is liquefied, the temperature reaches 112. Now you have 12 degrees between initial and final temperature, and that means your sample is not pure because your sample now is contaminated and it has wide range of melting. Then we know your sample is not pure. So melting point, as much as it's valuable to identify a compound, is also as valuable in order to determine the purity of the sample. If the sample is not pure, it's going to have broad range of melting. If it's pure, it's going to have sharp range of melting. Now, if it was a general chemistry, you would just say that the sample is not pure and you leave it. But in organic chemistry, if your sample is not pure, you are going to learn techniques how to purify impure samples. So, first week of the semester, first week, which is next week, you are going to practice measuring physical properties like melting point, boiling point, and learn what's the application for melting point and how the melting apparatus works and all that. Then you learn about techniques for separation. So the experiment 2 is distillation to purify liquid. You can purify liquid from liquid contamination if they have a different boiling point. If one boils at 50 degrees, the other one boils at let's say 90 degrees, you can separate the two using distillation. You can separate the liquid from solid contaminant by distillation. So it's purification for liquid. Then you learn about crystallization. Crystallization is purification for solid compound. So if your solid compound has a broad range of melting, then you are going to find proper recrystallization solvent, do recrystallization, you purify your sample, you dry your sample, you do melting point again. When you have a sharp melting, at that point you know you have a pure sample, then you can start identifying your sample. Because if your sample is not pure, the good saying in chemistry that garbage in, garbage out. If your sample is not pure, the physical property you're measuring is not valuable, is not good enough that you can determine the structure or know what your unknown is or what your compound is. I'm not going to overwhelm you with different techniques that we have. You are going to learn because we will learn about 5, 6 different techniques, and that's the first part of the organic 1 lab. The second half of organic 1 lab, we are going to do more chemical reactions that corresponds to the lecture that you at that point you're taking the different chapters like SN1, SN2, or resolution, or use of clarimeter and others. So we do combination of the experiment. So that is one of the purposes of taking organic chemistry lab. 2 good competencies that I'm more happy about them. One is like bookkeeping. and the other one is housekeeping. Since we cannot train you with the housekeeping aspect of the lab because you are not in the lab, at least you know the value of it. If you don't have good housekeeping, you use the same dropper from one container to another container, you know that you're going to contaminate your sample, and if your sample is contaminated, it's going to be garbage in, garbage out. You won't be able to identify your sample. So at least it's going to be emphasized in the videos. But the bookkeeping part, which is very valuable piece or competency for the lab, is that you are going to be trained very well on that. We are following the ACS guideline, which is the American Chemical Society, in preparing of lab notebook and preparing of lab report for organic chemistry lab. All the components that we are using is for each one of them is kind of universal. Everyone, if I've taught in different universities and different countries, and anywhere from South America to India to Iran to Nova to FIU to Miami-Dade. So different places that I've taught, I've used the same. And my both children, they have graduated from different school, one from UF using the same format. So I'm just saying that the format is the same. Most faculties, they follow the exact same format, and if we do follow the same format, we prepare you for your next step better. So it doesn't matter where you take your organic chemistry, the procedure for writing lab reports should be the same, and most of the experiments are the same. It starts with techniques and then it moves to reactions. And the bookkeeping part, it's very, very important. Chain of custody and recording and documentation. It's something that very, very valuable, a good competency. The assignment. Before I move to assignment, I'm just going to go to chat area to see if there is any questions for me. Any questions, or do you need time for questions? No questions? Okay. Assignments. You have 4 different assignments: pre-lab quizzes, lab notebook, screenshots, and lab reports. You have a question? Catania, is that right? Did you order it online? Okay, I show you and in the syllabus how to get that. Or when you go to the assignment, when you click on the assignment, the instruction on the assignment also is going to show you how to do it. And I will make sure to go back to that to show you how to. Oh, you order from bookstore online, then you have your receipt. You have your order confirmation number. Lab manual. There is no lab manual. There should be no hard copy lab manual. Is the ebook is the lab manual that we are using. Okay, perfect. Okay, it's something that you gotta we will you know it requires a follow-up. Looks like it. When you place your order, it says that you have ordered, or yeah, that's good. Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Okay. Prelab quizzes. The Prelab quizzes are you would need it for next week. You don't have to. If you are College Academy students, then you have to buy it from bookstore. If not, beginning of the syllabus, it has the links how to purchase it online from Vital Source, and it's very safe and secure. Vital Source is the place that we have the book, and then the ebook bookstore kind of adopts it from the Vital Source. So you can buy it from Vital Source unless it's a College Academy. College Academy, okay, use it. Then you buy it from bookstore. That's fine. But make sure you buy the ebook. Perfect. Okay. For Prelab quizzes, there are 10 of them. The questions, you will see them in the ebook. So when you read the experiment, and after the experiment, you see the last page of the experiment, then you see the Prelab questions. Most of the questions on the Prelab quiz is coming from that page. So it's not kind of a surprise. It's just a Prelab assignment, but I put it in format of the quiz. And you take it before the lab begins. So before 12:30 next Thursday, you should take the Prelab quiz for experiment 1. And same thing for other quizzes. Lab notebook. For the lab notebook, you buy the composition book, black and white cover, the cheapest composition book that you could get. It doesn't matter if it's lined or it's graph paper, it's fine. You leave the first 2 pages for table of content. On page 3, you start with your experiment 1. And what goes in there is the title for the experiment. And then chemical reactions. I say if any, because for organic 1, we don't have many reactions. But if your experiment contains a reaction, you just copy it from the ebook. Mechanism, if any, again, most of the organic 1 experiment doesn't have mechanism, but if it does have mechanism, you copy it into the lab notebook. Material you're using, when you read the procedure, okay, something that I just remembered that might save you a lot of time. Experiment 1 has general procedure and specific procedure. I only want the specific procedure. The specific procedure is a page or a page and a half, but the general procedure would be many pages. So you don't need the general procedure, just the specific procedure from the ebook. And also, you want to draw a table that you are collecting your data. How do you know what should be included in the table? Is when you are reading the experiment, the procedure, it would tell you, for example, you need to record initial melting. So in the table, when you create your table, columns and rows, then you would label it initial melting or initial temperature for melting, final temperature for melting, or if you're measuring mass, then it says mass of the reactant or mass of the product. Sometimes it says mass of empty container, and then mass of the container plus the product. So when you read the procedure, you come up with the list of the items that needs to be measured, and that's how you draw the table. And that table is going to be ready when you are watching the video, the actual experiment, you record your data there. That's for the lab notebook. Okay. Okay, good questions here. Good questions. One is that the Prelab quizzes on D12. Yes, the quizzes are on D12, but the questions are very similar to the ones that you have them in the ebook. It's not 100% the same. It's similar. So when you read the procedure, you look at those questions before you take the quiz. It's going to be easier for you to take the quiz. Physical notebook. unless you are using Notability and you are writing by hand. It's not typed up. This is not a typed up document for notebook. The typing up is for lab report. So Tarek, if you're using your like a Notability, or you are using a Surface or something to write on, it's okay to use digital. But if not, tablet to write on, then it's fine. Then you just capture the screen, you save the images and you upload. Okay, for screenshots is the it doesn't kick in until experiment 3 or 4, but after experiment 3 or 4, I'm telling you this, I'm asking you while you're watching the videos that to take a screenshot at this time, and then you are going to take all those screenshots. Please do not submit like separate images. What I want you to do, I want you to put all the images that you capture copy them in a one Word document, then convert your Word document to PDF, and then you are going to submit one single document. Why PDF? Because it's a smaller size, it's easier for you to upload than for me to download. It's faster for grading, because if you submit like 5 images, then 5 times I have to open the document, close the document, and it's going to take longer, and I don't take that single images. I want one document with all the images for a screenshot. The screenshots, they go to the same assignment folder that you have your lab report. How to write the lab report is a document that is included also in the syllabus. We will go over that soon. So you have a lab report. Your lab report doesn't have minimum page requirement, but just common sense. You do need some parts that it needs to be included. You need like a abstract, that's like 1 paragraph. You need introduction, that's about 1 page or less. You need discussions, which is at least 1 page. You need the paragraph of conclusion. Then you have your bibliography, you have your tables, you have your calculation. That should add up to 3 to 5 pages at least, right? I have a sample lab report that is 11 pages, and students, they look at this, oh my God, I'm gonna write 11 pages every week. No, you don't have to write 11 pages every week. Is that you are writing a lab report that has an abstract, introduction, discussions, and conclusion with the table of data, and if there is calculation, you would show. It doesn't have to be long in order to be good, as long as all the components, what is asked, it's included there. Attendance is mandatory, but is not going to be long. Today probably we have the longest time of meeting. Maximum is going to be 40 minutes, 45 minutes, beginning of the class that we meet. We go over pre-lab discussions. I'm going to call for attendance. Starting next class, I will ask questions every 2 to 3 minutes. I will ask 1 question randomly from students who are logged in. And I want to make sure that if you're logging in, you're also participating. I want to make sure that you answer questions. I want to make sure you're present and you are physically and mentally present there. You're not just logged in, to make sure that everyone is active participant. Okay, any questions before we go over grading policy? No questions? Okay. Lab reports, you have 10 experiments, that means 10 lab reports and 10 pre-lab. Each lab report about 10 points, and each pre-lab 6 points. So 60 points in total for pre-lab, 100 points total for lab reports, 30 points in total for lab notebook. And final exam is going to be a proctored by honor log, and I want to make sure that you take that practice honor log or honor log test quiz or something to make sure that it's set up properly. To do that, if you don't remember that from your lecture, make sure that you start with tutorial for the honor log. because if you don't start with the tutorial, it's not going to give you the, it will ask for password. So if it asks for password, there is something wrong, you missed this step. So if you send me an email, I would just say, go start with the tutorial, and then you will get it. It should not ask for password, it's auto-generated. Very good question, Elizabeth. We are getting to that now. Withdrawal is last day is March 17th. For audit is the same. Please do not wait for the last day to ask for audit, because you won't be, I don't want to miss your email, and if I miss your email and the deadline is passed, then you won't be able to get it. Communication, D2L email is the best way, so please use that. If sometimes you have questions that I know you're creating often, students create like WhatsApp group outside of the class, but I encourage you use the discussion board. There is a student cafe in the discussion, or course cafe in the discussion board. You can post your questions. This is not, when you do group work, it's not about I don't look at that as like trying to cheat, is trying to help each other, and I would be very happy to see that you are trying to help each other to understand something, or if you missed it. Everyone is going to watch the video. The videos are not very long. Everyone is going to attend the pre-lab discussions, because I ask questions and I call for attendance, and if they need help and you can help them, I would be very happy to see it. So I'm not, I have no control over the WhatsApp group, and I don't have any problem with it at all. But I'm saying that if it's in the course cafe, then if I see there's an answer that is not complete, I can also participate and give you a better, response, maybe. The discussion, please utilize discussion, is a good option. And for communication, D2L email. Accommodation, if you need accommodation, please contact this number. Classroom atmosphere, some of them does not apply for remote learning, others do. But please, when you attend the class, do not think that this is just logging in. When you attend the class, please pay attention, answer questions, participate, help other students to understand, and also by asking good questions and by answering questions. Academic honesty, all the documents that you are turning in is checked with Turnitin tool for originality, and the originality, if you have high level of similarity, is going to cost you point, and it will cause trouble. Okay, even if you were working with the lab partner, the only thing that could be the same, it would have been just the data. Everything else must be different. So lab reports are individual assignment, is not group work. Thank you for the question. It's a good question. Course schedule. I spend a little bit more time because I didn't have this before. Now, if you look at the end of the syllabus, when you have the course schedule, it actually says exactly what is due when. Like today, we have introduction to the course, and these are the assignments, the welcome letter, course syllabus, watch the video, and additional items that for the student orientation. Complete introduction discussions. It's a short discussion, so at least whatever you want to say about yourself is not, it's not mandatory, but your name and your major, I believe, is mandatory. and purchase your ebook using Vital Source, unless you are using scholarship money. You can buy it from bookstore at that point, but make sure you purchase the ebook from bookstore. Everything is due for the week 1 is due on 14. Experiment 1. So you have 3 types of assignments. So one is the lab notebook, which it says submit images of the lab notebook pages for experiment 1 into the assignment folder. Is the same assignment folder for the lab report for experiment 1, and this is due before next Thursday. Prelab is due before next Thursday. Watch the recording. That's during the lab Thursday of next week, after the pre-lab discussion. And then your lab report, you have 1 week time after the experiment to write your lab report and submit. And is the same format for all. So this is a reminder again to make sure that you have purchased the ebook, because if you don't have the ebook, you won't be able to write the introduction. And I don't want, and also the other problem with that is that you won't be able to see assignments or quizzes for experiment 2 and experiment 3. Those are graded assignments, so there's a condition for those to be released. So if you purchase it, make sure to submit it, so that would open the additional assignments for you. And they are all very similar format until we get to the final. The final exam is honor log proctored and is going to be available during your class time. Now for your question, Elizabeth, how to prepare the lab notebook and the lab report. These are 2 separate documents. Lab notebook, usually you write by hand. You use composition book. And the only parts that it goes in there mainly is the material and procedure, but with the proper format that we have here. So you number your pages and any corner used for numbering the pages. You leave the first 2 pages for table of contents. Then you start for each experiment. You write the title for the experiment, you write the material you need, you write the procedure, and you draw a table for data. You take a picture of those pages. If it's 2 pages or 3 pages, you take a picture, or you can scan, use Cam Scanner. Install Cam Scanner. The free version of Cam Scanner is very, very powerful, or powerful enough for this course. Cam Scanner on any smartphone, you just scan those pages, and when you scan, it's going to save as a PDF. So if you take the pictures one at a time, one after the other, it's going to compile them in one document, so it's already ready to submit because it's PDF, and you would submit it into the folder that is called Prelab for Experiment 1. Then you have another folder for Prelab for Experiment. For the lab notebook, the composition book is the only one that I would accept it when you were in the lab. Now with the online environment, because you're not bringing back and forth to the lab, there is a better chance that pages don't get teared up like for Spiral. The pages are perforated, and that's how it's designed to be perforated, to be able to detach them. So it's not like a permanent document. But if you think that is not going to tear, then you can use it for this semester because it's online. But if you were coming to the lab with the Spiral, I would say no, don't use it. Composition book is cheaper than the Spiral and is more secure, and that is supposed to be the one and we want to have all the same lab notebook for it. So you can use any at this point. And you take the screenshot, not the screenshot, you take the picture or scan. Scan is better. Please copy into, if you are not doing PDF, using Camera Scanner, if you're taking picture, copy into Word document, because when you submit the picture, if the format of the picture is not proper, I won't see it. Sometimes the pictures are sideways, and it's very hard for me, and I cannot rotate it in D2L, the images, in order to see it. So it's not easy to grade. Sometimes it comes out like very tiny, but when it's in the Word document, you already can see, and you can just enlarge it to fit the page, and we can see it better. I can see it better. Word document with lots of pictures is going to be heavy. So when you convert to PDF, you would reduce the size. But if you use the Camera Scanner, that's a better option, but I don't want to require that. So that's about lab notebook. Now, lab report. I'm going to explain it to you, but it makes more sense to you when you look at a sample, which I have like 2 samples. Also, when you write one, you want to make sure to come back here and look again and make sure that everything that is asked is included. So what needs to be included, first of all, is a typed up, is not handwritten, is not copy of the lab notebook. I know some faculty for 1046, they ask the lab notebook and then they ask pages of that. No, this is a formal lab report, and it's much, after the first 2, you get used to it, and it's much faster. So you write the first page, the title page, you write your name. There's no lab partner, this semester. You write professor name, and then you write the date experiment was performed. Abstract is it can be on the same page as the title or the next page. Okay? So you can leave the title page just with your name and information, and the second page start with abstract, or the top name and the class and the bottom part abstract. What goes into abstract? Abstract is a short summary of the experiment. You want to make sure there is a reason for different color that I have there. You want to make sure to include numerical values, because those numbers are the ones that you're showing me. You're defending yourself and saying that, yes, my experiment was based on these values. I know that I did my experiments properly, and I have good % yield, or the melting point of my product shows that this melting point corresponds to what I was looking for, to correspond to literature value, and based on this, I can say I have pure product. So I want to make sure to see those numbers in the abstract. Is a short summary, but includes the numbers. Introduction is the summary of the introduction that is already in the ebook. So if you have like 3 pages or 2 pages in the ebook, you just summarize that to like 2/3 of a page or 1 page, and you would include that introduction there. You don't have to use external resources, other resources, but if you do, make sure you use it in the reference part for the bibliography. It's not mandatory though. When I teach at different colleges, sometimes I make that mandatory, and I say you need like 3 minimum references for your class. I already use enough references to include enough information in the lab manual. You could use the lab manual. Let me see if there's a question that I have to answer right now. The lab report is in pen. Okay, for the lab notebook, yes, pen needs to be used, ink needs to be used, please. With the pencil, it won't be easy to take take the, it would be more important and crucial to use pen when you were in the lab and you were doing the experiment yourself. You know, one of the reasons I have to explain why they came up with this idea that it has to be pen, because they didn't want students leaving the lab, going and talking to others and say, oh, my data, I don't like them, so let me erase it and put the new number. So they want to make sure that is ink. So you cannot erase it. And that is a requirement. The data section has to be using, you know, you have to use ink. Then crossing the numbers, the mistakes, single line through. That's another emphasis, that you don't hide anything. If you white out, you can change that number. And then you change that number, the new number we don't know is coming from someone else's data, or you back work, like how did you find that new number, because you didn't repeat the experiment. Even if you repeat the experiment, they say just single line through and write the corrections. So those are the purposes. Since now I am the one performing the experiment, it's not perfect. There are some experimental error, but at least it's the error that is coming from me, because if it was perfect, then you couldn't write conclusion, you couldn't suggest like ways for improvement. And I'm also human, so when I'm doing the experiment, I have like personal error, human error. So it's a good question, but it's not as important, Sammy, for this method of teaching as if you were the one doing the experiment for crossing. So single line through, no whiteout, and using pen. And then what's the purpose of numbering the pages now that we're talking about that? They don't want you to tear one page and start writing again, because if you write again, you could massage the data, you could change the data. That's the whole point, is not to change the data, because you have to deal with the data that you get from the experiment, be able to explain that. If it's wrong, you have to explain why you got it wrong. And if you were doing this experiment again, what would you do to get better data? Rather than wiping out, rather than bleaching, rather than hiding. You don't want to do that. And this is like a training for you not to do those things. So good questions. I normally don't talk about all this, but since you ask, I have to. A 3 to 5 pages lab report is for every lab. We do not include material and methods. You do not have to include into the lab report, because you have them already in the lab notebook. And those are the one that is kind of hardest, especially like for material, to type them up, because you have to format subscript, superscript, capital, and all that, and sometimes drawing the structures. Okay, introduction is the summary. Material and method, you don't have to include it. Result, make sure is a table. No paragraph should be used for the data. Make sure you draw a table. Border lines should show for the table. I should see the columns, I should see the row, and title for what each number is. After the table, you do your calculation. Discussions. When you listen to me next class, or listen to our discussions and pay attention, maybe you want to take some notes. Anything that we talk during Prelab discussions basically can go into the discussion part. Because if we talk about like experiment at the molecular level, experiment what is happening inside the reaction. For example, when you prepare a sample for melting point, use a capillary tube, and you drop the capillary tube to get the sample down. If there is an air gap in between, air is a good insulator, but is not a good conductor of the heat. Do you hear what I mean? It's not a good conductor of the heat. Because it's not good conductor of the heat, the bottom portion of the sample, it gets heat up. The top portion is insulated, doesn't get heat up. So it takes longer for the top portion to get melted. So by false, you are going to get a wide range of melting, and the wide range of melting translates to impure sample, which is false. So to avoid that, you have to make sure that you have proper packing and no air gap. That goes to discussion. There are some questions that I added to the experiment, and it says on top, that it says, these are for you to just think about it when you are writing your discussions. You don't have to answer them all and turn it in at all. It just helps you what to write in the discussion part until you get used to it, and then after 2-3 experiments, you know what to do. And I will be here to help you. Conclusion, very similar to abstract with some additional information. When you write your numbers in abstract, you don't have to say what are the errors, sources of errors, but in conclusion, yes, you have to say sources of errors. Then you also have to have suggestions for improvements. If you were doing this experiment again yourself, or you were asking someone else, you were teaching someone else to do the experiment, what would you tell them to do based on your experience? If you got low % yield, what to do not to lose the product? If you got low melting point, what to do to purify your sample? Maybe your sample was just not dry enough, and you can help them to get better results. The grades that I will have in D12, those are raw scores. Is not your final grade, is not the average in progress, but it's actual grade that you have earned. In order to report the final grade, what I do is I use the Excel and I do the calculation based on the syllabus. Originality, you want to make sure to pay attention to the originality. There is a sample conclusion here, and your conclusion, should be like 1 paragraph. This one has 3 paragraphs, so it doesn't have to be 3 paragraphs. But if you read it, you get a feeling of how should you write your sources of errors, or how would you give suggestions for improvements. Now, I'm going to answer your questions. If I did not answer any of your questions, you can ask me now your questions, or what else? Is there something that I promised I will do it and I haven't answered? I also need to take attendance. Do you have any questions for me? Any questions? Sure. Do you want me to bring up the lab report now, or show you where it is? And the lab notebook. Okay. For the lab notebook, I have to go to my son's room, and I'll be right back. And you can write your questions there. Let me get the lab notebook. Okay, here's the composition book for the lab notebook. He's in medical school now. This was just the old paper, old book that was left here. You see that pages are numbered, and he didn't take it with me, someone else. That's his name, and Dr. Kudura was his professor. You write the title for the experiment. If there is a chemical reaction, you would include the chemical reaction. Let me stop sharing this so you can see this part better. Okay, so you have the title for the experiment, They ask for purpose. I didn't ask for purpose. You don't have to include. You have the title, chemical reaction, if there is any, mechanism, if any. So these are mechanism, but probably for different experiment. If it's not included in your lab manual in the ebook, you don't have to include it. Some reactions for organic one, some experiments in organic one do not contain any reactions. It's just the techniques, so you don't have to worry about it. And you also need a table that you would include your data. So it's very simple. Let me look at the table. Where did he write the table? I'm gonna have to. Well, it needs to be tabulated. It's not tabulated here. I'm gonna show you how to. You just draw a table line right here. Okay. This is a table. So you have like mass of the beaker plus the sample, mass of the crystals, something like that. So in case if you're just worried about the mass of the reactant or product. Very simple. The lab notebook, I show you right now. The lab notebook and both of them are already in D12. I actually have 2 of them. And if you scroll down on this side, on the left side, you see the bar when is like a highlighted, like a dark gray. That means that you can go up and down. Very simple things, but sometimes it's helpful. You don't want to find it in the hard way. So it tells you like honor log proctoring. It gives you the how to prepare organic lab report again, but it's very similar to what I just told you. It's the exact same thing document. Sample lab reports, you have like 2 of them. And if you open this lab report, you have the title page, you have the abstract, you have the introduction, material, which is optional. You have the result, the paragraph, it's not needed. The table is needed. Calculation, yes, is needed. You need the calculation. Tables, it's needed. So you write table. I'm more concerned about the tables when it comes to result part. And another table. This is for solubility. You can put very similar table, except that we didn't do the hot on the video. You don't have the hot part, and you don't have to include the hot. And we will talk about it next class also. You have your discussion. This is the long version of the lab report. That's why I had to say it doesn't have to be 11 pages. You can put anywhere between 2 to 5 pages as long as everything that is asked is included. Bibliography, and these are a copy of the pages of the lab notebook. Okay? So you write the these, I like them, I want papers. I want to make sure that I have, I want tables. So you have one for the table, for solubility, you have for melting point. Just draw the lines. Draw the lines that it says. I put this my initial here, but this is for completion. It's not for grade at this point. But I usually like the tables. So you have both samples here for the lab notebook, and you have it for the lab report. Another one, you have title, abstract, Introduction. I require like a maximum 1 page. It's optional. This student had more. You have the table for data. Some experiments, they just have a tiny table. Other experiments, they have more. The discussion. Again, 1 page of discussion is sufficient. Bibliography. I said that into a couple places because the samples that I put, they are long. I said in syllabus in a couple places, and I repeat that a couple times. It doesn't have to be 11 pages, between 3 to 5 pages, as long as you include everything that is asked, it's sufficient. Okay, let me look for your questions if you have any. Okay, ebook is a bibliography, and if you look at the announcement, is known as that is known as the published book, and that's how you reference it. It tells you here how to whole authored book. This is the format that you are using. Okay, this is the format that you are using. Provide the author, year of the publication, title, and the publisher of the book and the edition. Okay. Very good. So the ebook is the reference for you. Okay, any other questions that you might have? Going to stop recording.